Shabbat Shalom, everybody. This is Rob Shmuel, Rabbi Stephen, yes, with you with this week's 10-minute Torah. I'd like to give a word of thanks to Judy Grabiner for conducting Friday night services so eloquently, and our team of our Torah readers and our gabbis that led the Saturday morning service. Alan, Hushang, Isaac, and all the folks that participated. Thank you very much. My wife and I went off to see my father, whose first anniversary of his 90th birthday. He's going to be turning 91 very soon, and I got a chance to visit with my sisters, and it was very nice weekend. So, thank you again. Parashat Vayetzei. So here we have now the story of Jacob coming into his own. So Jacob has left his home in Mesopotamia, and he's going to Haran to be with his mother's family. And that, of course, is her brother Laban, who is his uncle. And he goes there, and he's there to find a wife, and unbeknownst to him, really, to make his fortune. So he goes off there, and once again, we come to a well. And there's a little joke that I learned as a kid. What do you know what the wives of Isaac, Jacob, and Moses have in common? Well. Yes, wells seem to be predominant in the lives of some of our famous folks, some of our patriarchs, and of course our greatest prophet. A well was where people went for water, and a well is also an illusion, kind of a metaphor for Torah study, because it's you see the surface, you have the opening on the surface, but then the water goes deep, and that's what nourishes us. You can exist without food for quite a while, but water, you will dehydrate and you will die. So people need water. And if you notice, the Hebrew word for heaven is shamayim, the heavens above, and shamayim contains the word mayim, which is the word for water. So there's a very spiritual, nourishing connotation to the idea of water. So Jacob is there, and he is inquiring of some shepherds that happen to be there. He's there. Do you know who Laban is? And they say, of course, yes, we do. In fact, that's his daughter Rachel that's coming right now, and Rachel is a shepherdess. Now, Rachel is coming with some flocks, and Jacob sees her, and of course, it's love at first sight. And he's absolutely ecstatic to learn that she is a cousin. He can marry her. Yes, they did that back then. And he introduces himself and helps her feed the flocks. Now, there's a connotation here because this might be important to what happens next. The fact that here's Rachel, a young woman, probably a teenager, about maybe 17, 18, somewhere around there, who is charged with minding the flocks. And because it's her, because there aren't any menfolk around, people thought that Laban, her father, wasn't really much of a shepherd, didn't really do well. God didn't really alight on him very well. So she brings him home. Laban finds out who he is, and of course he's overjoyed because he remembers when he was a teenager himself, or a lot younger himself, that his grandfather's servant came to find a wife for his father, and he thinks, probably rich is running the family. How disappointed he was to find out that Jacob really has no money. There are various midrashim that talk about why Jacob didn't have any money. Maybe he left his father, early. He didn't get his physical inheritance. Maybe his inheritance was spiritual. Later on, when he meets up with Esau, who has 400 men, Esau's done well. Maybe he's the one that got the inheritance. Who knows? The physical inheritance. Who knows? It's definitely a topic for discussion. So Jacob, of course, wants to marry Rachel. I'm getting ahead of myself. He wants to marry Rachel. And Laban says, well, work for me for 7 years, and that'll be, since he didn't have any money for to buy the bride, that's what they did back then you'll work for me for 7 years. Isn't it interesting that later on in the Torah, we have this period of 7, right? Because 7's a number of completion. Work 7 years, you've completed your term, and you can marry Rachel. You've basically paid off for her. And of course, later on, when we start getting the Torah, as we know it, the mitzvot, the commandments, what happens? A person is indentured for 7 years and then they go free. Maybe this is the beginning of that. Part of our heritage, part of our tradition. So Isaac, of course, Jacob. Jet lag, folks, coming back from Florida, dealing with the time zones. And by the way, I hope you all adjusted well to our new time zone here. We're now in standard time. So anyway, Jacob works off the 7 years, and it says that it goes fast for him. And of course, the contrast is that when people are waiting for something, time seems to go slow. Not Jacob. He was very happy. He was looking forward to marrying Rachel, his beloved. And 7 years are up, and out comes the veiled bride. They have the ceremony. He takes her into a tent. Behold, it's Leah, the older daughter. He goes to Laban and says, "What is this trickery?" And Laban says, "Well, don't you know that it's our custom to marry off the older daughter before the younger daughter?" And that actually was the custom. Of course, he could have told him, but Jacob was expected to know. He says, "Well, I really want Rachel." And Laban says, "Tell you what, you complete your 7 days of feasting, of your wedding feast, of your wedding term, whatever it was, that they get to know each other. And after that, you can marry Rachel, and you work for me for another 7 years." Right? So Laban is sitting there taking advantage of a situation here. So Jacob does so. He consorts with Leah. Then he marries Rachel. He's now got two wives, two sister wives, which later on in Torah, again, is forbidden. But here, it's not. And of course, Jacob is marrying within his family. The apple doesn't fall from the tree. He wants those genes in his family as he was directed. So here we go, another 7 years. So now it's been 14 years. And Leah has given birth to 4 sons. Rachel, of course, is barren. She is not fortunate as Leah, Leah being the older one, Rachel being the younger, hotter one. And Leah conceives first of Reuben, the oldest. Then, because God, Reuben, has seen that I want a son. Then Shimon, Shema, God has heard my plea. Then Levi, my heart, he has, also given me a third son. And Judah, Yehuda, comes from the word Hodah. I am thankful to God for giving me a son. So 4 sons. Rachel, meanwhile, is just, very sad. She can't have a kid. So she says, "Here, take my wife Bilhah to Jacob and you can concubinage is what the term is. She will give you a son in my place." So she gives birth to Dan and Asher. Dan because God has judged me. Asher because it's made her happy. Leah, not to be outdone, says, "Here's my handmaiden, Zilpah," and God and who's left? Oh, God, because it's been lucky. That was actually a god. God was a god, but here it just means luck. And going through the different tribes, see if I can remember who they were without any type of mnemonic aid here. But there was Dan and Asher, there was God, and I'll think about it later. It'll be a test. So finally, Leah actually conceives again, and she has Issachar and Zebulun. And she also gives birth to Dinah. So now she has given birth to 6 sons, 7 children. And Rachel finally, God remembers, that's the term, God remembers Rachel, and she gives birth to Joseph. Okay, this is going to bother me. I'm going to look it up. Forgive me. But it was God, and that's Gad, and Naphtali, of course. And so now it's a happy family. Jacob goes to Laban and says, "I'm thinking of leaving." Laban says, "Well, wait a minute, work for me some more and we'll get some wages." So he works for him and he arranges this thing because Laban is looking to take advantage of him. So of course, Jacob tells Laban, "I'll tell you what, I'll take all the freaks, all the sheep and the goat freaks, the speckled ones, the off-colored ones, etc." And Laban is, smacking his lips, thinking, "Oh, that's so rare, forget it." So Jacob arranges a way for all these off-colored sheep and goats to mate. And I believe the Art Scroll, I've been using the Eitz Chaim this year, just kind of as a change, but I believe the Eitz Chaim Chumash, I've been using the Eitz Chaim, the Art Scroll Chumash, talks about how the animals would be startled, they back up, and they get mated. So it was not really so, metaphysical as we might think. It was just kind of a good plan. The passing the genes along. And at the end of those 6 years, Jacob's like, okay, it's time. Let's get out of here. I don't trust Laban. He's off at a shearing festival, shearing the animals. That takes a while. That's our escape. Let's get out of here. 4 wives, 12 kids, bunch of sheep and goats, things, and off they go. Laban, of course, chases him, says, why did you leave so abruptly? I wanted to, give you at least a good send-off. Jacob says, come on, you've cheated me hundreds of times. That's what he said. And by the way, this is the model of workers. Even if you're working for an unscrupulous employer, you still work as you're supposed to. So they make a pact. He goes off, and that's where we end up. So long Parsha. We will see you Friday night, and we will see you Saturday morning when we will do the reading. Looking forward to seeing you again and getting back in the saddle, as they say, getting back on the beat. Shabbat shalom, and thank you again for coming to services, all of you that did, even though I wasn't there, and giving your support to the synagogue, because that's what matters. Shabbat shalom.